Hi guys, today in this video we interview a Germanic New Medicine Practitioner, Robert Jardine. He does do private consultations. I'm going to post his contact details and his website below, so have a look. Bear in mind with this interview we struggled a little bit with connection, so there's times where it does drop off a little bit, and also I've been speaking to Robert for a little while, and unfortunately, we sort of just jumped into the interview without a real introduction into German New Medicine. So, if it's something that you're not familiar with, bear with us as the interview goes on. We do cover the topic and introduction, what German New Medicine is, and the Dr. Hammer, who founded the framework of German New Medicine. So this is all covered as we go. So bear with us, have a listen. Hope you enjoy, and let me know your thoughts. So yeah, Rob, really appreciate you joining me today. I come across your work actually a while ago, listening to Adrian on Adrian's YouTube channel.
Yeah.
And I think I said to you before, I got quite into the John Sarno TMS, tension myositis syndrome, and it really kind of opened up the idea of how your psychology is, has a big effect on health and the whole kind of mind-body connection. And it was then that I come across German New Medicine and come across your video. So since then, I've probably listened to everything you've done, and I've found a few other people as well that have done some really good work and presentations and interviews and podcasts. And
good.
Yeah, just absolutely fascinating. So would you mind just kind of starting with what German New Medicine is and how you got into German New Medicine?
Okay, Jay, yeah, I'd love to. German New Medicine is a complete and total paradigm shift in our understanding of disease. It's nothing more or nothing less than that. It is an absolute, complete reversal of our understanding of disease, and it is also a hard, objectively proven science. So it is devoid of any hypotheses whatsoever. Right? There's nothing in it that is not 100% objectively proven and provable in the next case. Dr. Hammer died in 2017, and I believe approaching 50,000 cases in his portfolio when he died. And those cases most of them were complex with many different symptoms, many different diseases. And the 5 biological laws which Dr. Hammer uncovered for mankind was at play in every single symptom of every single patient, and was objectively proven to be so. So it's in as much as I say that is a paradigm shift in our understanding of health, because it is the first system of knowledge which is factually proven and provable in every case. There's no hypotheses whatsoever. So nobody, oh well, germs cause disease, oh germs don't cause disease, or any such thing. Hammer's work, it covers everything except chemical poisoning or injuries in some way, like physical injuries, or even radiological injuries, or some kind of weapon that they might have invented. It doesn't cover that, and it doesn't cover starvation, but everything else it explains. And it's so massive, it's like an elephant that's in the room. It's so massive no one can see it. It's like I've spoken to many people about it, and the biggest problem I have is that it takes such a shift in understanding and such an open mind to even contemplate such a paradigm shift that the biggest problem that I face when I'm trying to get the word out. But once you prove it to yourself, because that's the best way of learning German New Medicine, is to to learn it and then see it happening in your body, right? And then go, oh, right, okay. So I got, I down with the sniffles or anything really. Let's look at what happened in life. And when you understand the 5 biological laws, you can actually piece it together and say, right, that's what caused my flu to start that day, or that's what caused my cold sore to erupt, or that's or anything. Okay, it's just marvelous. It's a marvelous piece of information for humanity to grow to. Right? If humanity embrace it, we would grow into it, because it gives us permission to be what we really are, to understand what we really are, to understand why things go awry in some people. I mean, some people become depressed, become violent, they become abusive in some way, or it even explains why that happens in the brain. And when you do the CT scan, you can actually see the brain areas, the brain relay, I call them, in operation as the person is behaving in this psychotic way. So it not only tells us about physical diseases, it tells us about how we interact in a pack, in a social pack. So that's I'm really enthusiastic. You can tell that's I just think it's in these strange times that we live in, it's so needed. And I first got into it because I'd been a therapist for about 6-7 years, back in 2006, I think it was. And I was trying to help my sister, who had a so-called genetic and called rheumatoid arthritis, and she was suffering really with it. It seemed to be affecting almost every joint in her body, and even her spine was getting inflamed. Her shoulders, her elbows, her wrists, her fingers, her toes. I mean, she was, a young woman. She was getting crippled quickly. And I tried everything, the omega-3s, loads of them, tried all the vitamins you could want. I tried, blood tests, tried avoiding anything like the mobile phone, anything, we tried everything, and it made no difference at all. And then I was in Auckland on an advanced kinesiology workshop. And I met a guy there who told me about Dr. Hammer's work, and I came back and I researched it, and with I could learn from one article, I had a session of therapy with my sister, and we walked up a river together, as a matter of fact, and we were walking, talking, and all the time I knew where I was going with the conversation, and I kind of knew what I was looking for, but I had no idea what I was looking for, because Janet was a private person. My sister Janet, she's private, and I was just talking and asking the questions, leading on, trying to figure out when it started, what happened, and so. And then we got to a certain place. I remember just like it today, and she just erupted in tears. Like, I must have just touched a real nerve, an emotional trauma that she'd been carrying. She'd been carrying, at that time, she'd been carrying it for about 16, 17 years, right? And she just burst into floods of tears and remorse, and she was sobbing and crying. And she told me about a thing which is entirely private to her, so we'll not discuss that, but the trauma that she had been in, that happened around her, she'd witnessed it, and there was unjustified self-guilt was part of that trauma, or that burden that she was carrying. And when she burst out with this and shared it, and she cried quite some time. It was very emotional. That was the end of her rheumatoid arthritis. Just gone.
Do you think over those years was she coping with the trauma, or just kind of pushing it down? Did she?
Yeah, just getting by. You know, she was just living her life. She had pretty much forgotten about it, right?
Oh,
Her
wow.
her
So she,
biological her biological brain was still hanging on to it, right?
yeah,
But her mind, her psychology, had forgotten about it. I mean, yeah, if you talk about it, she would have said what she was prepared to say, right? It was private, a very personal thing. But in all that 16 years, and you know, she had many hundreds and thousands of conversations with people over that time. You know, she still had the really aggressive rheumatoid arthritis, inflammation in all her joints, right? I mean, don't get me wrong. After she had this huge cathartic expression of emotion, right? Within it flared. Then about 2 or 3 days later, it started to subside, and then within a week, it was very much reduced, and within 2 weeks, it was gone. But her joints were all still deformed, right?
yeah.
Because that the process had done that to her. But the inflammation was gone, and her her whole brightness was back. You know, she she had relieved herself of a massive burden for sure, right?
Did she have any other symptoms? 'Cause
Um,
I know when you come to the end of a conflict resolution, sometimes it can create other healing symptoms, or was it just that just kind of ended, or
well, with hers, the the it's right. Not to get too in depth into the five biological laws, but rheumatoid arthritis, it's an inflammatory process, and all inflammatory processes become inflamed when the life issue driving them, when it goes into a temporary resolution.
okay,
And that's when the inflammation flares up, because the inflammation is a biological attempt um, to rectify what had been happening prior to that temporary resolution of the emotional life conflict, right? So what happened with my sister was she had a big flare, lasted 3 or 4 days, right? Um, and then it just subsided and went away and did back. So the body really finally, it was like the body kind of, it's like doing a marathon. Oh, I don't know how to make an analogy of this, but it's like the body was getting to the finish line and going, oh, celebrate, and the inflammation was coming up, and then every time she up and for those 16, 17 years, the body was then having to go back to before the finish line again, get back into the problem, and then go into the resolution. So with rheumatoid arthritis, what you've actually got is a person who's suffering ongoing resolution of a conflict which is being reactivated, right? But with my sister, when she was able to share and express this deeply hurtful herself, that, and to me, no, I mean, I just hugged her and cried with her. Do you know what I mean? I just felt how that she'd put herself through so much torment for something that was not her fault. That wasn't the way her mind had done it, right? So when it had finally got it up and shared it and it was gone, we really identified what the emotional thread was. That it's like you got to go right in the emotional thread, right into the trauma. You can't just talk about it and blah 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 blah, you know, not get specific. You've got to go right in that emotional thread, and it bursts open, and then it comes flooding out, and then the healing starts. And yes, she did suffer big inflammation for as long as it took to subside and never to come back. So as you said, right, sometimes if you resolve a conflict, you will get some symptoms. For example, all heart attacks are caused by a resolution of a conflict.
that's terrifying.
Yeah, well, it's just the way it is. If we know that, right, if we know that, we can prepare for it and get through it, or we can make sure that we do resolve that conflict, because if you do, it could be fatal. I mean,
Yeah,
that is the way the body's wired. Now, without that knowledge, you're just stumbling about blind, aren't you? You're just waiting for fate.
I was going to mention actually on that point, would you recommend, because German New Medicine is a massive paradigm shift, but then when the penny drops,
Massive.
you actually realize it's more simple than you think. But if somebody's got an issue and they've identified through German New Medicine that this is a, you know, conflict or a resolution phase or whatever it is, would you recommend, rather than them trying to fix it themselves, to actually try to work with a practitioner who might know the, you know, things like you've just said, if it's worth actually dealing with that, or is it kind of worth moving on and managing the symptoms? Or
Yeah, well, that's a really good question. The answer is yes and no, right? If you already know Germanic New Medicine, Germanic New Medicine is the proper term as opposed to German New Medicine. So if you're already familiar with and understand Germanic New Medicine, then you don't need somebody like me, right? You know, you can work it out, but you do, your friends, your close friends, or as Dr. Hammer would say, your pack. You need your pack who also understands Germanic New Medicine and who will support you, because you will need help if you're getting through big stuff, right? You're vulnerable, you're unable to care for yourself, you're going to be, you may even, you know, who knows, it depends on what program's running, what you're going to get, but you pack around you who are tight, who will protect from the mainstream medicine if they need to, who will keep you safe in your own space, so that you can allow nature to thing. But if you don't know German New Medicine, right, big ask to learn it after you've suffered a diagnosis shock. You know, if you go to the doctor and you say, "Oh, you've got prostate cancer, Mr. Jardine," poof, the blood will drop out of my head, and I'll go, "Oh God, I'll be." If I didn't understand Germanic New Medicine, I would be in a bad state, right? And that is, there's no, you do not have the wherewithal to learn paradigm shift under that stress, right?
Yeah.
When that happens, you're just grabbing at any lifeline that's thrown to you.
Yeah.
Right. So in that situation, then you most definitely do need to involved with somebody who really does understand it and can help you make your own decisions, which might be in your highest good. But again, it's like nobody can take responsibility for healing you. It's you that's got to do that. A therapist can advise what he thinks, and you know, I mean, even this interview. I mean, I sort of, I have to say, well, you know, anything that I say is my opinion. It's not medical advice, but it comes from an awful lot of experience now. And to me, you know, the 5 biological laws, as discovered by Dr. Reiki Gerd Hammer, have proven themselves to be 100% accurate in every case.
Yeah. And
it's frighteningly predictable. You know, there's no hit and miss. There's no like, oh, you know, talk about, oh, your immune system's low, or it runs in the family. No. Absolutely not. If you get a brain scan, you see the mark, you can tell what conflict caused it, you can tell which tissue is involved, and you can tell what stage of the process they're at. You can just join all the dots.
Yeah.
Right? It's so precise.
This is the thing, I think, with allopathic medicine, right? Like I was saying to you before the call, my auntie, right? She never goes in the sun, ever. And she was diagnosed with skin cancer recently, literally last week. So when she messaged me, I was like, what? And I said to her, we've got no cancer in the family, right? And she's like, the doctor said to me, do you have cancer in the family? So obviously the answer is no. And then the doctor said, you're spending too much time in the sun. And me and her almost laughed. We're like, you know, I always make jokes about that side of the family. They're like vampires, right? And the issue is on her shoulder here, which as a woman is rarely out anyway. You know, it's literally like here. And when we were sort of talking about it, so it was like a lesion on the skin, and it's been there for a very long time. And she said it just got bigger and bigger and bigger very quickly and really itchy. So I was like, roughly when was that? She was like, it was when Pippa died, which is her dog. So my auntie doesn't have any kids. So she treated her dog like a child, right? When leading
Yeah.
up to the death of Pippa, you could barely talk to her. You know, she knew it was coming. She was absolutely traumatized. And then when it happened, I mean, she absolutely wet the bed. It was chaos. And she was like, it actually happened about that time, thinking back. So if you look at it from an allopathic perspective, I don't feel, I don't feel there's any kind of link there. When you look at her lifestyle, I think there's probably some arguments there, and I think she'd admit that herself. But in terms of the kind of trauma and that immediate reaction to something so big happening that she knew was coming, the dog was getting older, and
Yeah.
so yeah,
No,
I just thought,
yeah.
knowing what I know now, and I'm no expert, like I said, I've been into this for a little while, but I'm starting to see it. I'm not seeing it myself, as generally speaking,
Yeah.
Touchwood was really good. But I'm seeing it around people, and I'm seeing it, people I know, and I'm asking questions. When did that, roughly when did that happen? And I'm
Yeah.
sort of piecing it together, and
What you
definitely.
do. Yeah, that's how you start to prove it. Yeah, you start to see truth, right? And the more, and when you learn how to look, you start to be able to see more truth, because when you discover, oh, so inflammation is a sign of healing, even if it's just temporary healing, then you're not looking at trauma, but you're looking for the resolution of an issue. You
Yeah.
see, so that's when you can really start. You think, so I got the flu. Let's say somebody says, oh, I can't believe it, fucking that flipping horrible job, and I just go on holiday and I come down with a flu. Do you know what I mean? I finished on Friday, and here I am, Christmas break, and I'm lying in bed with the temperature, right? And
It
well,
always seems
temperature
to be
means
when you
healing.
go on holiday as well. Have you noticed that?
Yeah,
You
because
get
that's when you leave. I know that's when you leave the rat race. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, I had it. We went to Mexico 2 weeks. Within 2 days, tonsillitis. It's so
Exactly. So
specific.
there you go.
Can't believe it.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh
Well,
my.
you see, your auntie. I mean, that's a point in question, right? So your auntie, right? If your auntie is right-handed, so this is my right hand. I don't know how it looks like this. I'm lifting my right hand, right? So if your auntie, right-handed, right, then with the tissue in question, which is the epidermis, the layer of the skin. I'm making an assumption here because we haven't discovered what exactly cancer it was, but it most likely is. Okay, so it's dermal cancer, most likely. Okay, if she's right-handed, then the left half of her body is most likely to be in relation to her nest, or whatever she looks after in her as a woman.
Mm.
Okay, right. So we have the body, the way the brain, the logical brain called the psyche, the way it sort of sees the world. Everything it does is to adapt the body, help it for the purposes of ensuring that the nest is safe for the future generations to grow, or that the pack is safe, allowing for us to protect ourselves as a species in nature, as a pack, right? So this is the way the biological brain thinks about life. Okay, your auntie, right? So I'm thinking, right, if she's right-handed and it was on her left shoulder, if I mean big ifs, I don't know your auntie,
Let me look.
but if she was
Just as
right-handed,
just as you're speaking, I'm going to quickly look. So if you carry on, I'll be able to tell
right?
you in a minute.
So if she's right-handed and it's on her left shoulder, then it's likely it's not cast in stone because there are other factors, but it is likely that the issue drive so-called cancer would be to the nest, something she cares about. And strange enough, it could even be her mother, but it's unlikely to be her mother. But it's likely to be her baby, who was the dog.
Yeah.
Okay. Right. So when that conflict is active, if it's the epidermis, okay, when say, let's just go along with let's just put it to test, right? She's really worried about the dog, losing the dog, and she wants to help the dog, right? She wanted to keep the dog alive. She didn't want to lose the dog because she loved the dog, and the dog was a little baby, and she was looking after it. Okay, so if she was right-handed, that would all fit, because this is about contact. It's about hugging, touching. Touch is the most intimate contact you can have, isn't it?
Mm.
You know, you can tell someone you love them, but if you hold them and kiss them and embrace them, you're telling them 1,000 times stronger than just saying it.
Yeah.
Right? So touch is crucially important. So if I was to put it together, it could well have been that your auntie was suffering a fear of separation from her baby dog as it was getting iller and older and weaker.
Yeah.
Right? The dog then departed, gone to dog heaven, right? And your auntie then, the biological brain of your auntie says, well, I've got to let that issue go now because the dog died.
Yeah.
The biological brain does that. So that tissue, which was the skin, because it was about contact, losing contact with her beloved baby dog, okay, that tissue goes into resolution. That's when the so-called epidermal skin cancer goes up. When medicine calls it a cancer. You know, the skin starts to get red and raised, and all biological stuff starts to happen in that patch of skin. Okay, and there's cell proliferation. But the thing is that it's not real cell proliferation, because prior to the resolution of the issue, which happened at the dog's death, prior to that, there was necrosis of the squamous tissue of skin. But all that appears is not much, right?
Yeah.
But then when the issue goes to healing, it suddenly erupts into like a biological process, which then gets diagnosed as cancer. Okay, and then according to what Hammer says, and what I know, what Hammer said was that what happens then is that you get worried, you go to a doctor, you get a diagnosis, cancer, that hits you like a flipping bullet in the head, right? Not a type of news you want to hear, is it, right?
Yeah.
The trauma of that diagnosis usually starts lung cancer. Now, Dr. Hammer saw that in hundreds and thousands of cases, time and time again. He says because lung cancer, specifically alveolar lung cancer, is caused by death fright. Would you believe a death fright? Right? You get told, you sit in front of a doctor who you might believe, and he tells you you've got this rapidly growing stage 4 metastasis, blah, 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 right? You haven't a clue what it means, but it sounds pretty awful, right? And you're petrified of the C word anyway. Oh my God. Oof. He's just told you you've got it. Oh my God. Right? Could hit right down to the center of your psyche and cause lung cancer. And if you look, lung cancer is supposedly the most common secondary.
Really?
Right?
Wow.
Oh yeah, by a country mile. And lymph as well, but there's other reasons behind lymph, right? But isn't that, you know, knowing German New Medicine, if Auntie knew German New Medicine, right, she would be going, oh, right, the skin lesion, all right, I'll just leave that. It's no big deal. That's what a doctor would tell her to do. Oh, she's fine. Keep it covered up. You'll be fine. Don't worry about it. For God, don't worry about anything. Worry's not good for you, he'd say. Just love life. Enjoy the moment.
Yeah.
right? And don't worry about that. That's not what happens to most people. So where was I? Not what I was even saying there, but anyway, it just explains it. And knowledge is power. And when people are stuck in that trauma, that hell of that sort of after diagnosis and the fear of everything, the whole brain goes, it's like avalanches happen inside the head. You know,
Yeah.
there's just mayhem going on in there. Everything just, you start to just, your character just collapses away, and you're just desperate and you're helpless. And if you learn Germanic New Medicine to a relative low level, just get the 5 basic laws into your head and understand it, you will be protected from that ever happening to you. Now, how good is that? They'll be the best immunization you'll ever have, because you will never be traumatized by diagnosis shocks into disease,
Yeah.
right? And
I don't know about you.
massively.
I've always felt like going to the doctors, hospitals, even the dentist, it's just traumatizing. I've always felt that deep down, and oh, sorry, dog's going mad. Yeah, and I've never really been able to put my finger on why until years later. The more research I do, the more I look into things.
Yeah.
It's like it's just not right. It's like you're walking into, like my dad's always said it. You go in, you never come out. You come out, more drugs, and you go
Yeah.
back, more symptoms, more drugs, and they've got you then.
uh,
Terrifying.
yeah. It, I just wonder what it's for, really, because it's medicine does not seem to be to help people get well, right? Because Dr. Hammer lodged his thesis for approval or disapproval, I think in 1981, right? That's a long time ago, and they still refusing to test it,
Yeah.
right? He has told them what causes all diseases and how to make them better. Guess what? They went to such extreme lengths to avoid testing his thesis. Do you know what they had to do? They had to change European law to allow the university to refuse to,
Yeah.
right? So now you start to see the bigger, you've only got to walk up to the top of the hill and look down at the valley people, and you think, hold on, there's other factors going on here. Life's not as simple as we think it is. Do you know what I mean?
Well, I think there's something also in that fear energy control. Like I always thought with the whole sort of COVID situation, I think we could probably get away with saying that now. 2 years ago, you'd have been banned, immediately for questioning anything.
Yeah,
But I think the reason it worked so well is because humans are led or easily controlled by the fear of the unknown, and the
yeah,
biggest unknown is death. So as soon as that is put into the psyche, immediate
yeah,
freeze. Oh my God, okay,
yeah.
like a gun to the head almost.
You're compliant. You become compliant.
Become compliant. And I think, if you look at, I think anyone listening to this is probably relatively kind of, awake to what's going on in the world. And the,
Yeah,
yeah, I think the kind of biggest conspiracy of all is why we're here and what happens when you die. Because if we knew what this was all about, and I think there are people that do know, the more you look into it, the more this reality reflects it back to you, and you find more books and information and more, just like the German medicine thing, you see situations and you look at it from a different lens, and that's a bit more data to add to the collection of data that's creating my philosophy or hypothesis of life. So
yeah,
I definitely think that there are people out there that know. And the fact that we're kind of kept in the dark, we're given a few options. You've got atheism, which is the big black nothing, which is terrifying. And then you've got the burning gates of hell because you're a sinner. Most people are sinners, unfortunately. And the only way to not be a sinner is to give all of your power to a book, and
Yeah.
there's not many other options, to be honest. And yeah, I think keeping it that limited is a very easy way to control people, with things like, yeah, like we just said.
Yeah. I, to me, when the C campaign started in 2020, right? I had obviously been studying Germanic New Medicine a long time. I only really started to study it intensely after my father died. And he died of morphine, because morphine kills everybody, right?
Mm.
That's basically the bottom line. Okay. And he died because he never had his will signed. And that's just an unfortunate situation, which happens to a lot of families, right? Um, his biological body was basically trying to divide up his issues to the way he wanted them to divide up his estate, if you like, to divide up his estate.
Yeah.
And he couldn't do it. And the trauma just hit him at some point in that process of being able to get his will established. And his psyche just says, you know what, Mr. Jardine, you need more. You need more pancreas, because it's your pancreas that creates all these enzymes which divide up your precious food morsel. Right? So that's what got my dad.
Yeah.
Well, that was cured, but unfortunately, you know, the way things worked was that he ended up on the morphine, and that was it. Just a game over. I was not in control of that situation, unfortunately. But the the I was just, my mind was gone to my dad there. I just know where I've gone from. Where was I? Just get me back on track.
Just talk about the fear.
Yeah,
The fear.
yeah. What it's all about, right? So when I heard about the sea, the sea, right? I just didn't, you know, I didn't. I obviously knew that the viruses don't exist. I know that as a scientifically proven fact, right? Um, so I just thought it would blow over in no time, but it just got so much traction. Okay, but I instantly knew it was a scam, right? But that's all I knew, that this virus is a scam, and all these big companies doing this and that, and I didn't really understand what went on. But it's funny because it's like I entered a new dimension of knowing, and I've discovered so much other stuff since I've been in here. I never realized about Magna Carta. Magna Carta 1215, and the Declaration, and I didn't know about common law. I never considered any of these things. But for me, the Agenda 2030 has been a huge enlightenment. I ditched television in 2012. Never, didn't have one since. But uh, I was just, obviously into my German medicine and therapy and living my own little life. But this last 3 years has been like, oh my God, uh, obviously in the early days, it was a lot of rubbish coming on. There's loads of people saying this, saying that, and, all the hairy fairy stuff coming out. And, it was good to sort of get into that for a bit. But I kind of grew through that. But I have learned some extremely powerful knowledge. I'm sure you have too. Like you've come into Germanic New Medicine. It's like, wow, you're really starting to sort of get to dance with this new way of being, way of understanding life. And the same is true with things like common law. And I didn't even know what that was. And now I've just read a book on it, and it's like, oh God, this is really good. And then you start getting into practical lawful dissent, which is about the Magna Carta, how actually we have lawful and legal. And what's going on in the world is a massive orchestrated basically a total destruction of everything they take for granted if they can get away with it. But there is a remedy as well, but nobody knows about it. So to me, this Agenda 20 has been a massive education in some of the dark things that's going on in the world, and also how we as a people, how we react to things. Makes you wonder, doesn't it?
Yeah, do you know, on my personal Twitter, I talk a lot about the false light awakening. It's a whole
Right.
topic, but essentially, just to break it down really simply, is this was prophesized that humanity would start waking up. And
Wow.
if you speak to anyone who has woken up, they'll always say it was either 9/11 or it was COVID. A lot of people are woken up with COVID. And you could say 9/11, whatever you believe, let's say you believe it was the inside job, which is probably quite obvious. But there was a big push for surveillance, security and all of this stuff. But equally, it was the biggest event globally that woke up the most amount of people. And I think essentially what they're trying to do, and this is why COVID was so obvious, they're trying to capture the newly awakened people because they need them to bring down the old system that they no longer need anyway, to bring in the new system. And when you look into people like Alice Bailey and Blavatsky, I always say her name wrong, and people like Albert Pike and Manly P. Hall, and when you start looking into what these guys were talking about all these years ago, it was about this awakening that's coming. And essentially, the new earth and the new age and all of this kind of stuff. It's really interesting. Like I've been battling with it for about 4 years now, constantly going through it and digging through it. And I still haven't really fully pieced it together, but I'm starting to see it. But it's interesting because I speak to so many people that are now starting to wake up. And I just think it's a very strange time, Did they know it? Are they going to use it? Are they going to weaponize it? I don't know. But equally, how do you not wake up when you're seeing, what we've just seen? And equally, you can see that the old system is terrifying. Once the veil, you lift the veil, the old system is absolutely terrifying. And
Yeah, it is.
I wanted to segue actually into, I've brought up a few times the terrain theory and going into like the Germanic New Medicine and the terrain theory. Obviously, we had this COVID situation. Then we had the vaccines. And what we're seeing since the rollout, we are seeing a lot more people, becoming unwell, right? Without sort of going too much into that. How does that sort of fit in with this paradigm? Because there's clear,
Well,
like you said before, if you're poisoned, then
yeah, but there's poisoning. There's you know, there's a few things. The first thing I would just get on to sort of just jump on to get the sort of playing field nice and level when we're talking about theory, terrain theory, or Germanic New Medicine, right? Germ theory is a theory. Terrain is a theory. Germanic New Medicine is a solidly proven fact, right? There's no theory in it at all, right? Every case proves itself again and again. It's just that nobody's got a CT scanner in their garage. I don't know somebody who can interpret the scan, right? So we're stuck in the dark. Nevertheless, there was a man who could do that. There are still people on the planet that can do that. And it is proven every single time. So there is no theory about it, right? But I think what you're saying is, okay, so how can I sort of say, oh, well, how are you so certain, Robert, that you're putting all your eggs in one basket with this Germanic New Medicine, but brain theory is very, it's very persuasive, and the theory, well, that's kind of getting a little bit, most awake people are thinking, well, maybe not now, right? Though most of them still think they catch something, they the cold, but it's just mild. It's because they've got an immune system which is lowered, and they catch the pathogen organism, apparently. But I happily put all my eggs in Germanic New Medicine, in as much as it has been very well discovered that there's no symptom that appear in the body without a brain relay controlling it, and that brain relay can be photographed doing it. And if the life issue which is causing the symptom, if the life issue is resolved, the brain relay photo changes instantly and the symptom changes instantly.
So just for people that aren't, because we didn't do an introduction really, we've just like jumped right in.
No, we didn't. Yeah, no, it's true. Good.
I was going to say, if anyone is confused at this point, go back and listen to some of your other interviews, because I've listened to a lot of them, and you know the amount of times you've gone over the same part. But essentially, what you're saying is
my mistake.
Oh, sorry.
Give me a minute, right? Give me 1 minute, right. Sorry. What Dr. Hammer discovered was that when we are least expecting it, we're living a normal life. If we suffer an emotional shock, let's just make it really simple. They're called, in Germanic, we call them biological stress conflicts. So these are events which we experience through our senses, right? And our conscious mind is caught on the wrong foot, and we are not able in that moment to cope with that shock. And what happens is the psyche, which is like the autopilot of the body, it modulates every tissue in our body, and it controls our behavior, right? So the psyche is common to all living creatures. So all mammals have got very similar psyches. Obviously, the psyche of less advanced species is much more simple, but nevertheless, they've got a psyche. Everything that's living has got, you need it to be alive. Basically, it's the life program that energizes the brain, which modulates the tissues, allows life to happen, right? Allows the lungs to breathe, the bowels to empty, and the heart to pump, and the eyes to blink, and the retina to go up and down. You know, the psyche does all this, right? It's not, doesn't happen by accident, right? It's the autopilot. But what happens is, right, this is what Dr. Hammer has discovered. If we're caught on the wrong foot and consciously we cannot deal with the situation, in that moment, the trauma goes past the conscious and into the psyche. And the psyche instantly starts a biological adaptation, a program that's into our genes, and it starts that process. And then the body there's a biological process that starts the body. Now, there are hundreds of these programs, all integrated into our brain and into our psyche, and this is what causes all different diseases. If you've got angina, bang, that's a territorial loss. Bang, right? You wake up and think, oh my God, I've got a pain in my chest. Never had that yesterday. Why have I got that? Oh, you don't know. Unless you know German New Medicine, then you do know, right? But so you get angina. So what happened? The psyche picked up on that territorial loss conflict. Let's say you got out of your job, or you didn't get promoted and you really wanted it, for example, something like that, right? So the psyche caught that trauma, decided to adapt the coronary artery on your heart, and it decided to make it wide, because from your psyche's perspective, incidentally prehistoric, so the psyche has never evolved. Consciously, we're very clever, but the psyche is still the same thing that was in us millions of years ago, right?
Don't
We had
understand.
language and before all that stuff.
It doesn't know what a
Yeah,
promotion is, or
yeah. It just sees you. It just sees that as a loss of territory, or there's a fear of loss of territory, right? So it says, oh, loss of territory. Well, I need to make the main artery feeding blood through the body and back to the heart itself, right? I need to make it wider so that I give it 3 or 4 days or 5 days, 6 days of widening angina burning into my chest every day, right? By that time, the the size of the artery will be like that, doubled. Or I don't know if it's doubled, but it'll be significantly bigger. Okay. Well, guess what? The biological advantage that is that person with the angina then is ready to charge back into the battle and to regain his territory. If you think about, I mean, I live up in the north of Scotland, right? We've got stags everywhere. That's what happens. The big stag who's got all the girls, okay. The young, they all fight, and if they fight the big stag, they then get all the girls, right? Well, the big stag, angina. Now that gives within 3 or 4 days, big stag will come charging back in again, and he may well, if the angina has opened his coronary artery up enough, right? His heart will be able to pump twice as much blood through his limbs and his, right? Because the heart's got to pump blood to itself, right? So it gives the stag a better chance of regaining his territory. The same happens with human beings. Only the thing is, we don't do that. We're controlled by laws and etiquette and right. So we never resolve the issue. So we end up having angina time. But nevertheless, it's the same biological process. And if you take the CT scan, so where was I? On the biological law. So the first law is there's a shock. The psyche perceives that shock, right? And in that instant, it attributes it to some theme, and it uses the relay that it feels is most appropriate to help that organism, man or beast, come that trauma. So with the angina, it puts the trauma in the right temporal lobe, just around about where I'm touching my head.
yeah.
You take a photograph of the brain and you can see it. There is no eye in it. Okay, it's there, right? The angina starts that day, right? Then you resolve. Let's say you have a board meeting 4 weeks later, and you end up getting your position back at work again, and you're happy, right? So then instantly that relay in the brain changes, and you can see the change on the CT scan very clearly. Bang, and the angina stops instantly, and the body then starts to repair. It's called the lumen, or the inside of artery. Starts to rebuild it, because prior to that it's been ripped apart, trying to make it wider to carry more blood for you to have a last chance of getting your territory back. It's all to do with evolution and survival and such, right? So halfway through that repair process is a thing called the epileptic or epileptoid crisis. It's a thing, and you actually mentioned this, that some diseases happen, like a big trauma in the healing. Well, a heart attack is, because midway through the healing of coronary artery related conflict, you have a coronary artery related heart attack. And there's nothing you can do. I mean, you can do a lot. You can help yourself get through that successfully if you know what to do. But nature is it's like a pre-recorded survival program that started, and then when it's resolved, the finishing or the resolution stage, and the set sequence of things that happen, and they're unavoidable. Right, so the heart attack is unavoidable. Once you resolve the conflict which is causing the angina, the heart attack is unavoidable. If the angina has not been lasting, if you haven't had it long, then the heart attack, you might not know you've had it. It usually happens at night when you're asleep, or in the evening sitting doing nothing, right? And that's the process. So so anyway, right, so where was I? So I've discussed everything is caused by a trauma, right? The trauma is a process, and if this process trauma, which is connected to a, you can resolve the life issue. The process goes into resolution. So the process is clearly defined two halves. It's got the conflict active half when the life issue is still bothering you, and then it's got the resolution half when the life issue has gone into resolution, like your auntie whose dog died, right? I'm making assumptions here, but it seems to fit, right? When the dog died, the cancer changed. So that is a sign that it's gone into resolution. A separation conflict has gone into resolution for your auntie. Yeah. So every disease is part of a two-phase process. That's Dr. Hammer's second law. And that way, if you start to know the processes, you know, if you get the flu, you know, oh, I've just resolved something yesterday, right? If you get hemorrhoids and they pop out your bum when they're bleeding, you know, I've just resolved something yesterday, right?
Yeah.
If you get intraductal breast cancer, which accounts for about 90% of breast cancers, right? The breast swells up very quickly, right? You know that you just resolve something. There's nothing to, well, according to Germanic New Medicine, there's nothing to worry about. In fact, quite the opposite. You've got to pat yourself on the back and say, well done, and get through it, right? Whereas if you have gland breast cancer developing in a lump, you know that the conflict is not resolved. See how powerful that is. You just got to know what the symptom is. Oh, it's glandular breast cancer. Wow. Right. So what's waking? One good question is, what's waking you up? Usually people waking up at 3 o'clock in the morning going, poof, their head's like, oh my God, I can't get this out of my head, right? This issue in life. Well, that's a good indicator that that's likely to be the issue that's driving, according to Hammer research. I mean, I'm trying to keep myself out of prison here, right? But
Yeah.
right,
I've had that the last 3 nights since I found out about my auntie. I've woke up at 3 a.m.
yeah. So you have gone conflict active about something. You don't know what it is. It could be piles. It could be, depending if you're right or left-handed. It could be eczema. It won't be breast cancer. Okay, but but you see how if you learn to understand
Yeah.
the symptoms, you can start to manage your life. So where was I? So we've got everything starts with the shock, and you can see the shock in the brain. You can photograph, there's no denying it. And that piece of brain always controls that tissue, and it does it in a certain sequence. When the life conflict goes into resolution, something changes and you enter the healing phase. So you get a different set of symptoms, all predictable, right? So there's, right? It's all good. The next law was the ontogenetic system of cancers and cancer equivalent diseases. So it's a big fancy way of saying this. Part of the brain which the psyche activates determines the type of symptom or active process which develops.
Yeah.
Okay? Right? And then the ontogenetic system of microbes is that the microbes that get blamed for everything are involved always in the healing phase. And if the psyche registered the conflict in the brainstem or the reptilian brain, there will be tubercular or fungi involved, right? But if it was registered in the new brain, right, which is the medulla or the cortex, right, the new brain, or even the new brain, which is the temporal lobes, right, bacteria, a different bacteria, staphylococci, streptococcus, and all these words I've never educated myself in because they don't mean anything to me, right? Because they're signs of healing. So you can tell. So he's even if you can know what type of bacteria are involved, you can even tell what tissues involved what trauma, where in the brain, and what to fix in life. You know what I mean? You can piece it all together and dig yourself out of a nasty hole, but let's put it that way, right? And the final law, which Dr. Hammer was able to put down a true scientific, objectively provable law, like a proper scientific law, which is, there's no argument if you look at it properly, is that all so-called diseases are just part of a biological process which has a real positive purpose if you can appreciate it from the evolution period within which it developed in us. It made perfect sense. And it was just what we needed then to keep us alive. Right? Like when you're a stag and you need the angina to open up your arteries so you can get back into the battle to find a mate. It's just what you needed. But now, because you're now a business executive and there's a young guy just been taken on and he's better than worried about losing your job or something like that, right? You get angina, you don't need it because you're not out to go battering the hell out of people in the boardroom, right? You just know the dumb, right?
Yeah.
You see, so, but if you know Germanic New Medicine, you'll be on the case quick. You think, oh, I've got angina, right? That was that meeting, yes, right? I'm going to do something to resolve this. I might going to get another job. You could do that. That would, if it was the job, right?
Yeah.
It could be argued the boundary of your property next door neighbor. Maybe he thinks that half of your garden's his, wants to build a shed on it, and you've got this battle going on. Well, for example, that would be something that could cause similar. Okay, so you see the power in it, and it's part of a cramp in my leg there. It's part of a process. 5 laws. Everything starts with a shock. Okay, there's a 2-phase process starts. In the active phase, this. In the healing phase, you get this. Like all full healing phase of a certain type of conflict. So there's no point having a flipping flu jab, is there? Because all is the resolution of a stress in life. It's the flipping point of getting yourself full of toxic concoction. There's no sense in it when you understand it, right? You can tell the let's say tissue that gets affected determines which part of the brain is involved, right? It tells you what type of conflict is involved, and type of microbes that are involved. That tells you as well. Everything explains everything. It's like a completely self-explained system of reality. Do you know what I mean? There's no theories involved with Germanic New Medicine at all. It's the jigsaw together. It only goes together that way, man. You're trying to put this. You've got the terrain theory, and you put that one there and this one there. Might be right. Or you got the germ theory, puts the pieces together like this, and you think, not sure. But New Medicine just puts the pieces of the jigsaw of life. That's good. Puts the pieces of the jigsaw of life together perfectly, and it just fits.
Do you feel that if your terrain is poisonous, right, toxic, say for instance, you had all your jabs and you're eating crappy food, you maybe won't have you maybe have deficiencies, right? So then the body can't perform this process as well, and then maybe the lungs are a bit more blurred. Or if you've got, we know that a lot of toxins are fat soluble, and they can store in the organs, they can store in the central nervous system, in the brain, etc. So maybe sometimes the healing process can overshoot the mark, or it can't heal properly because there's a deficiency. Or
I would agree to some extent with that. Deficiency has to be pretty severe. One deficiency, I'll give you an example. There's I forgot the name of it now. lung cancer, alveolar lung cancer, is caused by death fright, according to Hammer's research.
Yeah.
Okay. And his research is correct. And when that goes into the second phase, which is dissolution phase, so the death fright. For example, in the First World War, there was a lot of people involved in a war, either directly involved in it or they had children who were involved in it, right? So they were under the threat of death for 4 years, right? After the end of the first, there was a TB outbreak, and everyone was dropping dead of tuberculosis. There was, there was this, oh my God, it's this bacteria, it's killing everyone. Now, well, why wasn't it killing them in the war? I don't know. No answer to that. Medicine's got no answer to that. But when you understand it from the Germanic New Medicine perspective, you realize that there was a societal resolution of a death fright going on in many, many people. Now, the body tries to remove the excess lung tissue that's developed when conflict was active. When the conflict goes into healing, the body uses tubercular bacteria, its friend, if you ask me, to remove the no longer needed extra cells in the lung alveoli. This causes massive sweating at night. It causes extreme tiredness, and it causes an extreme need for more protein. Now, if you're on rations and you're living hand to mouth, right, and back in those days, food was valuable, not like today, right? You die of cachexia, which is a wasting disease, right? Or they call it TB. TB causes the cachexia, right? But reality is that you need that person to be eating a lot of protein every day, and body would have cleared out the cancer in lungs. They would have left caverns in the lungs, unfortunately, but nevertheless, the lung cancer would have been removed TB bacteria. So you can see, like what you were talking about nutrition. So you could see that if the TB epidemic, which killed millions and millions of people after the First World War, if everybody had a tin of spam every day, that would been reduced massively by probably 50 or 80%.
Yeah.
Right? People died, they wasted, because if the body doesn't consume enough protein to fuel the actions of the tubercular bacteria, they rob it from the body itself. So people just waste away because the TB bacteria, they're just programmed to kill the cancer, and they need the protein for fuel. So they just from the heart, from the lungs, from everywhere they can get it. You see, the body just melts away, and you die of basically starvation of protein. Now and it's all explainable through the 5 biological laws and Hammer's research. It's like talking about nutrition and stuff. So in that instance, yes, protein is hugely important, but it doesn't cause disease because you need the psyche to be involved and the brain relay, and it's photographable. Now, having too many amalgams, unless you're worried about it, if you're kind of blissfully ignorant to it, you're not bothered about it, right? It's not going to cause brain relay to fire to create a condition. Do you with me?
Yeah.
All the are modulated by the psyche in the brain. Everything goes through the brain. The brain is the central processing unit, right? And 13 days after conception, you get a group of cells, like an eggy sort of looking thing, right? And it's got basically 3 types of cells in it: endodermal, mesodermal, and ectodermal. And they're clearly defined, and they all live in separate parts of this little egg, right? And as we develop from conception, from 13 days onwards, right, everything starts to mix and start to become more complex. But the endodermal cells in this little egg thing, they go to tissues like the digestive system, but they also go to create the brainstem. So the brainstem develops that its corresponding tissue, and likewise the cerebellum develops with its corresponding tissue, and the cortex develops with its corresponding tissue. So they all come from the same seed, all come from the same group of cells. And that's how they're all wired together, so that when that brain relay gets activated by the trauma, that specific group of cells on your anti-shoulder gets activated. You with me?
Yeah.
Ties up.
Yeah. No, I get what you mean by provable. When you really kind of look into the links, it isn't a theory, and that's one of my issues with the terrain theory is, someone like my dad, for instance, smokes, drinks every day. He's 55, never been ill. I said once, when's the last time you didn't have a drink? He's like, oh, I think I had the flu 10 years ago. He's not an alcoholic, but he'll drink 1 or 2 a night, and then if he goes out, he drinks a lot more. So someone like me, that would kill me, because I think I'm quite health conscious. Yeah, and it plays on my mind. So I often think, is it the food that you're eating that, if it's unhealthy, is it that it's unhealthy that's causing problems, or is it your fear of the unhealthy food that's causing the problems? I'm sure there's a factor of both, but
no. I just want to put something straight here, right? That causes what? What? Because if you say, oh, your dad, you said the last time he had the flu was 10 years ago, but hold on, I've told you the flu is a healing symptom. You don't catch a healing symptom, right? All your dad basically said was he hasn't been too bothered about anything for a long time, so therefore he's not had a healing symptom, right? Yeah. And I bet you that when you say, oh, if it was me, that would, I would have been ill in some way. Well, the illness you would have had probably would have been the resolution. It's like when you go on holiday, right? You end up getting ill for the first week because you've just gone in healing, right? That's actually telling you that you've actually just resolved an issue, and you're actually just starting to get healthy. And you've just got to go through this illness. It's the wrong word. It's not an illness. The flu's not an illness.
Yeah.
Right? It's a healing phase. Yeah. And if you're a sensitive type of guy, a bit more worried and connected, a bit more concerned, well then, yeah, you're going to get more than like your dad has a few beers every night and doesn't, fag and watches the football and just dances with life in a nice relaxed way.
Yeah.
And yeah, he doesn't get, well, there's no illness, because Hammer's 5th law is all disease is part of a biological process which is helping us adapt and cope with life. So there's no such thing as illness, but there are symptoms. But your dad doesn't get them because he's kind of relaxed, things bother him.
Yeah, I do find with the terrain stuff, you listen to people and they're like, oh, it was heavy metals that were the problem. And then I realized I had mold in the house. And then I realized that I had a vaccine, all these years ago. And then I realized that I was this and intolerant to this. And then I realized I had Lyme disease. And then I realized it was Epstein-Barr or whatever it is. And it's just like this ongoing thing of realizing all of these poisons. And then you start to realize you are literally living in fear of everything now. I know we should be careful of
because no, Jay, you only live in fear of everything if you do not learn Germanic New Medicine. You go to www learninggnm.com, and you just put yourself into that website and you learn it. And then you lose the fear, right? Then you understand, because there's two things, right, that are the most likely things that you can get, is not knowing, or being not understanding, and not having control. Those two factors are at play in. I mean, I see lots of people get in touch with me with lots of awful things, they're trying to get better from lots of things, right? I work with a wide spectrum of problems, right? It comes to me again and again and again, not knowing and not having control. Those things are the most devastating, catastrophic emotions to cope with, when, especially when you get a diagnosis. Oh my God, I've got the diagnosis. Oh, you're helpless, right? And there's an industry out there that is just ready to make a lot of money and to do whatever they want to do, right? But if you understand, and through understanding you can feel that you can get some control back, then you're in a much, much, much better place. So learning Germanic New Medicine is the most important thing to do. It's for a self-preservation of yourself and your family. Absolutely. Right? Absolutely it is. Because not knowing and not having control, or feeling not and not having control, are devastating. But if you turn your symptoms into a clearly defined process, oh, so I've got the rash erupted after my dog. Oh, you go ting, right. Suddenly you start to understand. And then the worry disappears, right?
Yeah.
Do you with me?
Yeah.
And then right. So if that is ectodermal and it starts to my dog, that I've just got to leave that to do its own thing. Whereas if it's an endodermal lump in your prostate, right, and it's stopping you pee, go, right. So what's bothering me? When did this start? Okay, what's likely to be the cause of that I need to resolve? And then when you do resolve it, you'll know that night, because you'll start to that night. You see, so there's so many factors that you need. They're like lifelines of information that help through these traumas when our body is starting to do things that we're frightened of.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's like a survival suit. If you get thrown into the sea in a storm, well, German New Medicine is like landing with a full survival suit on and a big life jacket on. And okay, it does not guarantee you're going to get through this, because there's a whole pile of factors that family and medicine industry are two of them you can't control. But if you're lucky enough and you understand Germanic New Medicine at www.learninggnm.com, right, and you've got a group of friends who are interested in it too, then your knowledge grows, and then you are in a really strong position to die of old age.
Yeah. I was going to say, so the best time to sort of learn this stuff is now, because
Yeah.
I would imagine you get people that come to you that are out of ideas, and
Yeah.
I would
Always.
imagine some of them can't handle the information and they run back to the system that's already failing them.
Yeah.
Are you seeing both sides of the coin? You're seeing people that really do take it on board and learn and heal, and then others that they can freak out and then they just feel even more lost, and then unfortunately their fate's met, or well, not fate.
It's just because you understand what's happening, right, doesn't guarantee your success by any nowhere near it. Okay,
But if you
usually
knew it, though, you'd know the steps, so you could act sooner, right? Is that fair to say?
That's fair to say. But what normally happens is that people have been grappling with conditions like kidney failure for 10 years, and then worse and worse and worse, and then they discover, and I get a phone call and then we start doing we start doing consultations together. But there's another thing, right, that Dr. Hammer has discovered, and is he calls it conflict mass. Now, the biological conflict which causes the body, the psyche to respond and the body to adapt under the control of the psyche, the body's adapting, right? It uses a brain relay, and Dr. Hammer called this conflict mass, and it's like an unmeasurable factor which is significant in how well we're going to recover. And it's the length of time that the conflict has been active plus how active the conflict is. So if it's been an extremely active conflict, right, and it's been ongoing 5 years, right, then it's with the ability of the body to successfully survive that process, and that's the way it is, right? So, for example, if somebody has really, really strong angina and they've had it for 5 years, if they resolve that issue which is causing the angina, they will suffer a catastrophic fatal heart attack some weeks after the resolution of that issue, and there's nothing that can be done to stop that. Okay, because the conflict mass involved in that brain causes such a catastrophic epileptic crisis in the heart that you die. As a matter of fact, in a heart attack, death happens in the brain first, because the heart attack happens in the brain. The brain really is actually so swollen with fluid in the healing that at a certain point called epileptic crisis, the brain just can't cope with the fluid and it just bursts. And death happens, according to Dr. Hammer, in the brain before the body. The heart keeps after the person's dead.
Wow.
Right? So there's this conflict mass. So the sooner you learn German New Medicine at www.learninggnm.com, right, and get into it and be a good student and learn it, okay, the sooner you understand your symptom and you do something in life to solve it, if it's appropriate to do, you can do that. Do you know something? Even your perspective on the issue can put people in, right? Even changing your priorities, right? If you know, for example, if you know that this issue over the 2 square meters of garden that you're fighting over with your neighbor is causing you your angina, you might just say, do you know something? I'll just write a piece of paper and say, I'll give it to him. You can have it because I want rid of this angina. If that was, that's just a symptom, right? But there's all kinds of cancers that you might want to overcome, right? And you do anything to get that into healing and to get yourself into health again, right? So, Germanic New Medicine just gives us a perspective which allows us to manage our life, our wants, our needs. It allows us to resolve conflicts, to amends, to do deals, to let things go. Because when you realize that it's affecting your health, right? Your priorities change, don't they? Your perspective becomes more, you can let grudges go if you know that grudge is causing something in you, right? It becomes easier to do that. Yeah. So, yeah, so it's a must. It's no small chew, but just do it in stages. Go to that website and read 5 biological laws, and then read it again. Get your wife or your husband or your friend to read it. read it, and then have a chat about it, then read it again. And then after you've read it about 2 or 3 times, you'll go, oh, right, okay, yeah, that's kind of fitting into place now. And then you can go to the other part of the website and just dial in your symptoms. I've got asthma, I've got hay fever, I've got piles, I've got athlete's foot, I've got pancreatic cancer, right? And then it'll tell you, bang, bang, bang. And by the time you do 5 biological things, you'll be able to read the descriptions of what's causing that cancer, and you'll understand it completely. And it'll put you in a position of knowing, right? Which will put you in a position of control. And remember, I said knowing and control, not knowing and not having control. You know, it's a fine balance. And if you can get from the not knowing and not having control, you can get into knowing and control, it puts you in a much, much better place to manage your recovery.
Yeah,
and I've seen it time and time again.
I bet there's a huge element of self-awareness as well, because a lot of people aren't aware of, what's going on in there. So when physical things, and instead of getting too caught up in the physical side, maybe start asking yourself, what's going on in here? What have my worries been? What are my emotional? No, it's really interesting. Yeah.
And another thing to keep coming back to, always come back to this. Look, there's no such thing as disease. Your body does not want to kill you. Doesn't want to do that. It wants to keep you alive. So your body trying to help you with something. If you've got a symptom, right, that is part of a conflict active. Remember I said that the process has 2 halves. First half is when the conflict is unresolved. The life issue is active, right? And then the second half, when you get the flu or you temperature, you feel buggered and you just want to go to bed for a week, that's the healing phase, right? So if you've got a conflict active symptom happening, glandular breast cancer or a pancreatic cancer like my dad had before he resolved it, right? If you know it is, and you just go to that website and you look it up and think, oh God, so what the heck has been bothering me? When did this start? Then you can work out very well what life issue is, and then you can act on that.
Yeah.
And if your action is successful, within 1 day, you'll know that. Because within 1 day, your body will have got healing, and you will know German New Medicine. You'll say, bang, I've got it. I've done it. And this is what I've got to expect for the next 3 months. And then it will become like more of a managing process. Your recovery won't be like hopelessly praying that you get a good consultant to administer some toxic substances to you. You'll move from that into more of a managing thing, right? You'll say, I know what's happening in me. I know what my body's trying to help me with. I'll fix it out from my body so my body can give up on it. It'll go into healing. And this is what's happening. And it's going to be a long slog and I'm going to need help. So this is where I need my family on the same page as me. Or my friends, if you're on your own, right?
Yeah.
And then you're in a strong position to be, to die of old age, which is a rarity.
Yeah. Wow. Whoa. There's a lot.
Big stuff. It's big. It's big.
Yeah.
Because guess what? Dr. Hammer has given us like a looking glass into us.
Yeah.
Even our psychology, even our sexuality, even our dominance, even our personality, it's all written in the brain, and it can be interpreted. It's been interpreted by Hammer's work, right? Everything, all there, and there's a reason for it. And you just do the brain scan, and you say, all right, so this one's got let me think, manic depressiveness. Yeah, you can see what's causing it, and you can, even if you get really into Germanic New Medicine, you even know which part of your life history you've got to fix first before you do the other one. There's a lot to it, right? It's not something you're going to learn in a week. It's a life learning process, okay? But if you have bulimia, something like that, right, an eating disorder, and somebody says, "Oh, man up," or "control yourself," well, actually, if you learn Germanic New Medicine, you've got a good chance of figuring out what caused it. And if you can work on that life issue, then you've got a good chance of overcoming that condition and being free of it.
Yeah.
You see?
Yeah.
Have I convinced you? Have I convinced you?
Well, yeah. I mean, I'm thinking just even looking back at the situation I had, it all started when COVID started. And I was very much
Okay.
like you. I didn't believe what I was being told. And my biggest concern is how wild the government will get. That was my biggest concern. And are they going to,
Yeah.
mandate,
Me too.
the poking? Yeah. And I was getting vertigo. I told you about that. I was getting vertigo. And once the whole lockdown situation come to an end, the vertigo's gone. But at the same time, during that time, I was doing a heavy metal chelation. I was following loads of things in the whole terrain situation. So I was like, it's hard to tell which one has kind of helped me here. But once that come to an end, I started getting like tingles all up and down my body. So once the lockdowns stopped and life was starting to go back to some sort of normality, it's like I was in the healing phase almost, and I was getting all these other random
Exactly so.
things. Yeah, and it was only when I started to just live my life normally again and really let it all go that everything just melted away.
Lucky you. I mean, I'll tell you my story. When this whole strange period of life started in 2020, right? I got very worried because all at that time I knew was German New Medicine, and I had been teaching it, I'd been working with it. I've got a fairly good understanding of it, right? Nothing like Dr. Hammer had, obviously, but it's taken a lot of effort for me to learn how to have, right? And I got a rash, right? Now that rash is still there. It's a fear of separation, a fear of what on earth the government is going to do to us next, of our family getting up.
Yeah.
And it comes close. It depends on what news I watch, or not that I watch, but if I go on the internet, I listen to and what I learn, and you know what I mean. I'm still attached to that, and it's still got control of my psyche. No matter what I tell, I cannot force my psyche to let it go.
Yeah.
We've
gone from one agenda to the next, to the next, to the next.
To the next. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, we've got the latest one with the whole, the Israel and Hamas situation. So there's always something. And I like listening to you and sort of learning how this all works. It terrifies me with the general population who are unaware of this, because everyone was in fear during COVID. You was either scared of the virus or you were scared of what the government was going to do. So you can imagine the knock-on effect there. Oh God, it even worries me about me sometimes. I think, have I seen the end of this yet? Because maybe I've got some other biological programs going on, but I'm not even aware of yet.
Well, look, what I would say to you is, if you've been waking up bang on, pretty close to 3 o'clock, right? Then think to yourself, get your diary out and say, well, when did that start? Right, just get some facts and figures down. When did it start? What was happening?
Yeah.
And then chances are it'll sort itself out. Life has a knack of just resolving things, but all by itself.
Yeah.
Right. Okay, but I recently had about years ago, a year and a half ago, I had a trauma. Right, and there's me. I've studied Germanic. I discovered it in 2006 and really started to study it after my dad died in 2013. Right, I really just immersed myself in it then, and I had a trauma right about 18 months ago, because you see, you can't predict these things. It's
Yeah.
it's like I'm maybe a bit sensitive and the way my mind is, and I had a trauma anyway, and I developed. I don't know. I'm pretty certain it was lung cancer, but I can't tell that because I never went near a doctor. But when I resolved the issue, because I knew I had an issue, I just didn't know what was wrong with me. When I resolved the issue, I started sweating profusely every night.
Yeah.
Okay, and that's what, so I know that on the day that I solved that issue by changing my perspective, and I did it through changing my mind frame about a life event, which is personal to me, right? But nevertheless, I went through it with my partner. She helped me hugely, and I resolved it, started to sweat, and I saw it through. How good's that?
Mm.
What I do know from German medicine is that I had either an adeno or an adenoid carcinoma growing in my body somewhere, because the healing of that is always sweating, like, soaking sheets.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Did you have the 3 a.m.
Now,
wake up?
if I did not know German New Medicine, I probably wouldn't be here.
Yeah. Did you have the whole sort of waking up at 3 a.m. and all of that as well, or?
Yeah, I did. Yeah.
So because I'm getting that now, it's on and off. You know, it could be a couple of times in a week and then disappears for months.
Yeah. See that's different. That's not. Well, what I must say, I must counsel you, right, really strongly about this. Do not let your body become a stress, another worry for yourself.
Mm.
Right? Your body's trying to help you. Now, it's how ironic, if you worrying about your body's causing your body to try and help you,
Yeah.
that which can happen, right? Which it causes, it's massive. It happens an awful lot, as a matter of fact. So, first is as I said, note down stuff, diary. Just write it down. When did that start? What was going on? And then just relax into life and let it go. If it goes in a week or so, that's fine. If not, you want to go back to it. Think, okay, what issue? Something, because you will remember what it is,
Yeah.
especially the sooner you catch it, right? So do, um, I've learned that person is write things down. Otherwise, you're kind of stabbing in the dark. What the hell was it? If it's going on for 3 months, you can't remember exactly when it started, what was happening, right? But if it is if you are conflict active to the level that it's starting to wake you up, then if you write that down, if you've got that recorded, you probably will be able to find an issue that's landed in your awareness, and it's affected your psyche, and your psyche's trying to help your body uh, or overcome that life issue biologically,
Yeah.
right? So find the life and change your relationship with that life issue.
Yeah.
That's the way you do it, or resolve the issue.
Yeah. 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 Well, I've got a good feeling I know what mine was. It was around. So I had my own business during COVID actually for 4 years, and I've actually given it up recently to go back to work. So when I'm waking up, I'm wrestling with like accepting the reality of what I've done. Does that make sense?
Well, if it is that, I mean, remember, okay, that it starts with an unexpected, deeply felt issue, trauma, shock. So it, you know, it's it's possible it could be that, but it's something like it could be, for example, you could just be lying there and all of a sudden the penny drops. You go, oh my God, did I do that? Right? That's a type of trauma that could cause it.
Yeah.
But usually external things, right? Something happens, right?
Yeah.
Um, you can even, I also do know that you can you can get a trauma on behalf of somebody else. So let's say your lovely partner, something happens to her, say, you can suffer a trauma for that, most definitely.
Yeah.
Okay. That's really all I could say, without looking at more at it, which obviously we're not going to do in here just now. But
it's interesting.
That's learn German New Medicine.
Well, I was going to say, it's interesting that you sort of draw the lines of it has to be something that is a shock, not just a situation, something that is that's almost just thrown you off your tracks almost.
Yeah, it can be part of a situation, but it's as the situation's ongoing. Sometimes there will be a point of trauma, because that's needed to excite the psyche and the brain. Really, it's that trauma, that deeply felt unexpected shock that catches you on the wrong foot, right? It's highly personal. It's something that just you in that moment, and your psyche was unable. Your conscious mind was not ready or able to absorb that trauma issue. So the psyche just caught it. The way I like to describe it is it's like a penalty at football, right? The goalkeeper is the conscious mind, okay, and the net at the back of the goals is the psyche, right? Now, if the goalkeeper's on the right, and he tries to stop the goal, the guy getting a goal, right? He tries to stop the ball hitting the net, right? But if the goalkeeper was caught on the wrong foot, and he went the wrong way, and his conscious mind was not able to cope with play, the ball shoots past him and hits it. And that's the psyche. And even better is the net's like a really big thing with lots of square holes in it, right? Well, imagine they're like the brain relay. Whichever part of the net the ball hit is the brain relay which caught the trauma. And then from there on in, it's all predetermined. Through Dr. Hammer's work, you can work it out. You with me?
Yeah.
Wow,
Rob, what a conversation.
Yeah, heavy, big stuff. I know it big stuff, and I haven't even had my dinner yet. So.
Well, I think we sort of just jumped into it. We've almost done the interview backwards. We've sort of cleared things up at halfway point. But yeah, I think because I've listened to you so many times, it's quite easy just to kind of go into it and forget that people could be listening that have no idea what we're talking about. But I think overall we've probably brought it back and sort of covered everything. But did you want to sort of tell everyone where they can find you? And you've mentioned the Learn GNM website. Did you want to kind of go over all of that again just quickly?
Yeah, well, that'll be good. Yeah. LearningGNM.com website is a place to start learning it. Okay, if you're at a place where you think there's much for me to learn and I want some help with something now, but then you get in touch with me. I do consultations, and you can contact me through my website, which is www.robert-jardine.com. The website a little out of date, doesn't really talk about German New Medicine much in it, but you can tell I do understand it. And I do sessions on Skype or Zoom, and I work with people all over the world with all kinds of stuff. It doesn't need to be anything specific, it does need to be specific, but I don't just specialize in, say, Crohn's disease. Right? I have treated and I'm huge success with it, but I do more than that because I understand the 5 biological laws, which allows me to help you as I understand it to a point where you could start to grab out into your life to resolve stuff that will have a direct effect on your well-being.
Yeah.
That's a service that I try to provide for people, and you know, it works in many cases. Does and just everybody just learn this stuff. You know, learn it while you're healthy. It's the best time to learn Germanic New Medicine. Definitely so. Yeah, that's really it. It's been really good fun to you, and maybe we'll chat again if you feel it fits your audience. And yeah, all good.
Nice one. No, I really appreciate it. Thank you very much.
Nice one. Yeah. Good.
Take care, and I'll speak to you soon.
Yeah. Take care. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.